Good. All right, from the studio of Fairfax City, we are very grateful that Kathrine Shepard accepted our invitation to our show. Kathrine, welcome to my humble podcast.
Thank you so much, Claudio. I really appreciate it. Happy to be here finally.
Thank you. No problem. Thank you. Let's go back to the beginning in your life, Kathrine. How did you start with music to begin with? Were you born like in a musical family, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I definitely was. Like, I had the more I look at it from the outside, the more I'm like, yeah, it makes sense that I ended up here. So my dad is a drummer, and he has played drums his whole life. Even now, he's 78, going towards 79, and he still plays drums like at least an hour or more per day. So yeah, he was the kind of musician side of the family. My mom, she also actually she sings. She doesn't give herself enough credit. She has a pretty nice voice, and she used to sing in choirs and stuff like that. But her thing was more working on the business side. So she worked in labels. She worked with like booking festivals and like stuff like that, promotions, things like this. She also worked in the movie industry. And then I had like her brother was a musician. Her mother was like a designer, musician. So I mean, there was a lot of musical people and creative people in general in my family. So yes, I definitely was born into it. And really, apparently, I was told that I danced before I could even walk. So it makes sense that music was something that was going to become very, very important in my life. And it was probably around my teenage years, like I would say maybe 13, 14, 15, something like that, where I just discovered that I think I need this in my life to kind of feel complete, like in a form of expression. If it's at the time I was terrified of sharing it with other people, but just for me, just like to sing songs and to play songs on the piano, play drums because my dad was teaching me how to play drums. So I just realized this is some kind of like emotional outlet that I need in my life, and kind of very quickly decided that that's my life path and never looked back. Really, just made all kinds of decisions to end up where I am today in my humble little artistry here as Sylvaine. So yeah, that's basically how it started. Being in a musical family, getting into music really heavily also just like as a listener when I was, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 or something like that. I remember some of the first acts that I really got into, like the 90s stuff, like with Spice Girls and Backstreet Boys and like Hansons and all those great groups. But I was very obsessive. Like when I liked the music, even if it was like that kind of music when I was a kid, I got very obsessed with it. I would like listen to the CDs every day. I remember sitting in front of my like stereo at home with the headphones on, like listening and looking at the booklets, reading all the lyrics and memorizing everything. So even from an early age, I was pretty obsessed as a listener of music as well. So it wasn't that weird that this became my kind of life path so far, at
Okay.
least.
Gotcha. Good for you. Were you writing lyrics at the time when you were 14, 15 at the same time, or?
Absolutely, so many
Yeah.
lyrics, so many like emo lyrics from my teenage days. I have a lot of them too. Like I have several like books where I've written lyrics through the years, and I go back and I look at it, I'm like, oh, I was so young and so innocent. But yeah, I definitely started writing lyrics quite early on, and I also started writing music actually maybe a little bit later than the lyrics because I just struggled a bit with confidence. Since the beginning, I struggled with confidence. I had like this need to express through music and need to do music, but at the same time, I felt like I wasn't good enough, like as whatever instrument I was doing. So I think that kind of held me back a little bit from writing music, but I definitely wrote lyrics from a pretty early age and then got into the music bit maybe around like, I don't know, 16 or something like that. So a few years later. Yeah.
I got it. I got it. And then, but eventually you kind of needed to gamble and then take the plunge, right? And open up, right? So somebody, you have a hobby and writing lyrics and writing music. Hey, I'm not that bad singing in my home, in my room, in the shower, but playing live in front of people will be 10 or will be 500. That's another story altogether, right? How you manage to eventually say, okay, either I do it or I don't, right? So,
I think it's I think a lot of people that have a strong passion in life, be it music or sports or any other thing, like insert anything that is very driven thing, it almost feels like you don't have a choice. Like it's like this thing has
sure.
chosen you and you just kind of have to go with the flow. Or you block it out completely and try to do something else. But I think you might end up feeling kind of not complete as a person because it is a part of like your purpose here. Let's call it that. So for me, it was that need that I talked about, like to express and to express live, also share it with other people, like in direct like communication with them from stage, that's kind of over drove my fear and or my feel of like not being worth enough or not being good enough, meaning that in the end I still ended up doing this because I just, my love for it and my need to do it is stronger than everything else. So I decided, I mean, I knew this already. In Norway we have this thing where basically when you go to high school you can choose your major, so to speak. So you can choose to go something in a more creative direction. You can do something that's a bit more like hands-on that will provide you a job at the end of it, or you can do something that's very general. And basically, I chose right away music. Like even when I was in junior high school, I knew straight away that I'm going to be doing the music path. You have to have very good grades to get into the music department here in Oslo, at least, which is kind of interesting. So you have to, yeah, based on what you want to do, you have to get a certain amount of grades to be able to get in. And you also have to go through tests for theory and also like talents, basically, to get into the music department in high school. So I did that. And basically that was the first times I like properly performed for people. Before that, I already did like in junior high, I had like a group of friends and we would do some like, you know, at the ending of school for summer or like the beginning, this kind of Christmas concerts and stuff like that. I did do a couple of performances then as well. But it was first at this music high school that it really forced me to, because it was a part of my curriculum. Like I had to do it. And I still to this day remember the first time I had that like lunch concert in the first grade of high school. And I was so afraid. I was like terrified because I was really scared to sing for even myself back then, because I was afraid to like fully hear my voice and to see what it was sounding like. And again, still all of this, and I really wanted to do it. So this is kind of weird, like, you know, I just have to do it. I don't have a choice. But I remember that first concert, and I remember that was the first time I experienced the power of being able to literally stop people. They would be like walking past the hallway or like walking past the room that we were, and they would like stop and actually like listen to me and like look at me and like listen to my story. And I just remember thinking, I want to do this for the rest of my life. Because that's just, it is something so magical about being able to captivate someone and like transport them on your journey for a little while. And I just thought that that was like the most magical thing I ever experienced. And that basically just led me on to continue wanting to do this. And again, I was scared, and I still am scared sometimes. Like, you know, I still get nervous before going on stage or like, you know, before doing certain things. But it's just like, despite all that, I just like wanted to do it more, and I just want to spend my life doing that. So yeah, I just kind of got into the performance side and the kind of that more extroverted side of music through that music high school. I started that when I was what, 16 or something like that, 16, 17. And then from there on out, I just did more and more concerts, and it became quite clear to me that even if this scares me, I love being on stage because of, like I said, this kind of magical direct communication from one soul to another. So you don't even have to understand the language or have like any common whatever. You can still speak to someone from your heart to theirs. And that just changed my world. And from there on, I was just like, I just want to keep doing this. I want to do it everywhere. I want to do it as much as I can for as many people as I can, or as few people, just as long as they're open to receive my story.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, basically that was the start, and here we are. So,
Right. That's good. That's good. That's a very good explanation. You were born in Santiago, right? That here in the United States.
yeah,
Yeah. And then you moved back home when you were a little girl.
that's it. Yeah, I was only there for like a year or so in the beginning of my life, because my mom is Norwegian and my dad is also from San Diego, El
Yeah.
Cajon, San Diego. And basically, my dad was on tour in Scandinavia, and he met my mom that was working at a venue of sorts, like nightclub venue of sorts. And
Yeah.
they instantly, it was like love at first sight kind of thing. So
Good for you.
that is the reason why because that's not exactly like super connected between Norway and the States, but basically that's how it ended up. And they moved back and forth. They lived in the States for a while. They came back to Norway. They went back to the States. They came back here, and just ultimately decided to stay in Norway because basically the system here is just much more, what can I say, much more organized, much more protective than the social
Yeah.
system in the US. So it just became a natural choice to stay here. Yeah.
Understand. And your Sylvaine also is your solo music project. And I think in many categories you are labeled, or at least in the beginning, as a metal multi-instrumentalist musician. Um, for me, when I think about metal, I have like a different concept. Maybe that was early in the beginning of your life when you started, 10 years ago, as compared as when I saw you a couple of weeks ago here in Maryland with playing with Ivor. But that was a great concert, man. It was unbelievable. So,
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's funny
yeah,
this like little label because I mean I don't think I mean maybe I've used that word in like some interviews like that, but I never really said from the beginning that Sylvaine is a metal project. I never said that this is a whatever insert random metal subcategory genre. I
sure.
basically never said that. I just kind of I as a listener I always like I found myself drawn to bands that like to use like opposites in sound and try to make a balance between them because it kind of makes for a bit more of a what can I say contrasted sound, and I kind of feel like it also reflects our life on Earth and everything. Like I just like I don't know, it's just something that always intrigued me. So bands like, for example, Type O Negative is a very typical example that I always use because I love them to death. um, like the song. Um, and it's just basically I just found it fascinating to take little elements from also this kind of darker, so to speak, kind of music and heavier kind of music, maybe even like ugly elements, and try to make them live alongside more like atmospheric, more melodic, more like beautiful luminous elements. um, so it just kind of I think because of some of the tools or some of the things that I use in my music, like if it's the screaming voice, of course, this one is the most obvious one because it's hard to find that in, let's say, pop music or like some other kinds of styles of music. The screaming voice or like the distorted guitars, the tremolo guitars, like blast beats and all this kind of stuff in the drums. Those kind of things kind of make the project, or made certain songs at least of my project, also connected to the metal sphere, and like makes it so that I have kind of one foot in that scene without me ever actually saying that Sylvain is a metal band. So I don't really like to be in one box. I kind of like to be able to do what I need to do, like in terms of what I feel is right in terms of expression. Because I never really, when I started my music, I never really said I want to do this to sound like this kind of genre, to fit in with this kind of other bands. I just went by how do I feel that this expresses my emotion in the best and most worthy way, and of course was influenced by what I like as a listener. As I said, this kind of duality between opposite forces and trying to find balance where there's not supposed to be any balance. But that also means that I have a lot of other influences in my music. Like you said, when you saw me in Silver Spring, this set is very much more. I don't even know how to categorize this set. Like some of it is definitely Norwegian folk music based,
Yeah,
because my last EP that I released last year was like an homage to my Norwegian like musical heritage. It's a form of music that I've been fascinated with for a big part of my life, but I've never quite allowed myself to explore it in my expression because I was kind of afraid of like taking tradition and trying to kind of not change it, but like do it in my own way. Is always a little bit of a tricky thing
yeah,
to do, to find respect for what is already there and to still have it be your expression. But last year I did take that plunge, or the year before rather, and I released this EP. So the solo sets when I'm doing them now is very much like has a big influence of that, of course. But I also believe that some of my melodies and my vocal like phrasings in my bands, or like the band's part of Sylvain, also has a bit of the Norwegian folk music in it to begin with.
yeah,
But then the set is also very like it's very intimate. It could be quite pop, and some of the melodies, and I don't know. It's just like I think it's kind of hard to put it into one box,
yeah,
and I kind of quite like that. And I think it's also kind of it's quite nice. I think how the metal scene has embraced my project, and even when I released this folk EP last year, which I was a little bit curious to see what will the metal crowd, how will they react. I'm also signed to a metal label, Season of Mist. So it's kind of like I wasn't quite sure how that would be received. And my fans, my crowd are just the most amazing people ever. They're like, "This is what you need to do right now. We're following you in your expression, and it's still very Sylvain. It still has the feeling that we like in your project." So yeah, I have like a foot here and there in different genres, I think, and I think it's kind of
yeah,
makes it more interesting, and also it makes it interesting for me because like I'm working on the next record now, and I don't even know what it's going to be like. Like, I have 3 songs. I still don't know what this record is going to sound like because they're all really different. So
Good.
that's just how
Good.
music comes out for me. So yeah,
Good. You have an unbelievable, beautiful voice and a beautiful range.
thank you.
You're a very humble lady, but you're very good at what you do. Um,
Thank you. That's so nice.
no problem. Where do you speak very good English? Where do you well you learn with your parents, but when you move back home, you spoke English at home before you began learning Norwegian, I assume,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, English is technically it's the first language that I spoke at home, and then I
Good.
kind of picked up Norwegian as well. Even if I was living here, when I started
Right.
speaking when I was one, but yeah, so
Yeah.
I basically grown up with speaking both every day because I just like naturally seem to default to speak English with my dad and then Norwegian with my mom. So I kind of grew up just doing both. So I'm very grateful for
Right.
that. I'm so kind of bilingual and fluent in both. So yeah, and also in Norway, like people in general now, they tend to speak fairly good English just because nothing is like dubbed here or stuff like that. Like everything is in English. We see have it in our everyday lives. So people are exposed to it all the time. So I think that also you can't really survive in life if you're going to go outside of Norway just learn Norwegian
That's
because there's
right.
only like 5 million something people speaking it. So yeah, English is pretty. I think the level of English is pretty good, at least in the cities here in Norway as well. So,
Good.
thank
Good
you.
for you. No, no problem. Yeah, you do actually. You have a bachelor's degree in musicology from the University of Oslo, right? So
That's right.
feel free to elaborate what your name, your artistic name, Sylvain, was inspired by the word Sylvan. Feel free to elaborate on the importance and the meaning of that as well.
Yes, absolutely. That's correct. Like it came from the word. Well, it came from me wanting to try to reflect, even in the name of the project, this duality between opposing forces. And for me, a big thing that I'm inspired by, and that I also kind of try to talk about in my own way, is the duality between nature, the natural world, and urbanity and humanity. Because I think sometimes we live in harmony, and a lot of times we absolutely don't. And it's just interesting to see the relationship between these two. And I wanted to have that reflection in the name of the project because I knew that the nature side is really important because it's a big part of my personality. Like I need nature to kind of ground me. And growing up in Oslo, like where I'm sitting now in my house, like there's a national park like 8 minutes that way. There's a lake like 10 minutes that way. So I've grown
Right.
up since I was a kid with nature being a big part of my life and like always being present. So I wanted that to be a part of the band name. So Sylvain was something that I like because it was like of the forest, and I'm like, well, I've grown up like with the forest right next door, and been using it like
Yeah.
every week, basically. Even at school, we would sometimes have class outside in the forest. So um, that was kind of a natural choice. And then I wanted to combine that with something of the more urban side. So of course, I'm not saying modern. I'm just saying urban because I ended up with a French poet called Paul Verlaine, so not very modern thing, but poetry is something that also inspired me immensely since I was a teenager, basically, since I started writing my own stuff and like, getting more seriously into music. So I was like, that could be an homage to that, and also at the same time be the urban side that I wanted to kind of, again, the two things that are in harmony but also not. So I just took the ending of Verlaine and the beginning of Sylvain, and then it became Sylvain. Then discovered afterwards that it's an old-fashioned women's name in France, which I didn't actually know at the time.
Wow.
And it's also a butterfly, apparently, which I also didn't know at the time. But that's fine. That's a nature connection. So like when I go to France or French-speaking countries, they always say Sylvain, which is totally fine because that's like the name, like the name that they would know would be pronounced like that. But I always say Sylvain because in my mind it's like this is kind of the way I want it to be. So yeah, that's basically how that name came to be. I had lots of ideas, but that was the one that I was like, it looks right, it sounds right, like um, yeah, it just was the
Yeah.
the perfect.
Understand. Your first self-release first album, Silent Chamber, Noisy Heart. Feel free to elaborate how difficult it was to put that together. I think you worked for in the year 2012 and 2013 before you end up self-releasing. So it wasn't the cooking in the background, so to speak. for a couple of years. How difficult was for you to put together, and then it was a self-release. So I imagine that you approached like a record label, and perhaps people didn't know you and say, "Ah, well, we want to take a risk in this lady," and you say, "Hey, what the heck? I'm doing that on my own anyways. That's my life, right?"
Yeah, exactly. It's like, if life doesn't necessarily hand you any lemons, you're just gonna make lemonade somehow, right? You're gonna find the
That's
lemon.
right. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So I did actually, it was funny because I was talking to a label um, back then for the release of my first album, but like it went back and forth a bit, and in the end, nothing came of it, which is not surprising. Like as the decades have passed, labels have become less and less, what can I say, willing to take the financial risk on unknown artists. Which, with the way that the music business is and the markets are, and like if you look at it from a business perspective, it makes sense. I understand that it was more of a thing of the past where labels would take on artists and kind of help them develop into something. They still do, but it's just like less common. So I wasn't really surprised when I was ending up doing this as a self-release, because I was like, yeah, I'm unknown. Nobody knows anything about this project, so of course it makes sense. So it was more about, I think also this record for me was more about kind of proving to myself that I could do this, because I decided, I think it was loosely in like 2013, I decided to make this album. As I always say, and it's very true, I didn't tell anyone. I don't think I even told my parents at the time, because I was living with them when I was doing my studies back then, because I was still at university back then, basically. And I don't think I told anyone that I was trying to make an album, because I was sure I was going to fail at it. And it's just like, that's the kind of silly pride thing, because even if I were to so-called fail, what does that even mean? But still, if you fail, it doesn't matter. It's kind of nice when people have dreams and they go after it. So it was a silly, like, immature thing to do anyways. But I didn't tell anyone about it because I was like very unsure about how it would go, because I also had decided that I'm going to play all the instruments myself. And I had not played guitar at that point. I learned basically playing guitar by writing my first album. I played bass for a little while already. I had played drums, of course, for quite some time, and I had also been, working with my vocals and piano and stuff like that. But guitar was like the new instrument back then, and I was kind of learning how to navigate it without doing any lessons or anything. Which you can discuss if that's a good way to do it or not, but that's how I did it anyways. Um, so I think that record, it didn't, in one way, it didn't really matter as much like how it was released, because it was more about me taking the first steps towards actually doing what I believed since the beginning I was supposed to be doing, but I also didn't quite believe in myself. So it was like proof to myself that I can actually do this, and like I can express myself in a way that when I look at it out afterwards, there's always things you would like to change, but in general, it feels like emotionally worthy. It feels like the story I wanted to tell. And then I started like seeing other people out there also connecting to it, and I was like, oh my god, this is crazy. I can't believe it. So that process was pretty magical, actually, because I also had never recorded anything before at that time. So I was at university, and they have here in Oslo, they have they had, I don't know what the situation is now, but they had a really nice recording studio, because there was a couple of subjects in that musicology department that related to music production. And I was always kind of fascinated by that. And I mean, I took those subjects and I took the tests to be able to use the studio, because like you had to go through a certain amount of tests, and like, to make sure that you wouldn't like destroy the equipment, of course, or you knew what you were doing. So I did that, and then I decided that I was going to try to record this record. So it was very much, when I think about it now, it's kind of a crazy thing to do, because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to do anything. I really wasn't sure I could even do it, but I just decided, okay, I have to do it. Like, this is the moment. So I spent like, 10, 12-hour days in the studio, just like listening, trying to figure out how to work things with the microphones, the placements, which microphones to use, which preamps to use, all this kind of stuff, trying to learn the software, Pro Tools, because I was using Logic or something back then. So yeah, it was a lot. It was a steep learning curve. It was like kind of baptism of fire, just like going straight up the mountain right away. But it was also kind of like a really magical process, because I could see that little by little it was actually turning into a record. And I'll never forget the moment when I sat back and I pushed play and I could listen to the whole thing for the first time, even if it wasn't mixed yet, but just like sitting there going, oh my God, I actually fucking did it. So this
So
record was very much about that, like taking those first steps and kind of proving to myself that yes, you can do this, and don't don't think too much, don't overthink it too much. Just go by what you feel, and that is going to be your way forward. Instead of like telling yourself, "Oh, it's not good enough, it's not worthy," blah blah blah, or all those that kind of stuff. In the end, it's about like a need you have, which is a selfish thing. But then the beauty of it is when it is done, you can share it with others, and maybe you can make other people out there feel seen and less alone in their emotions. So yeah, it didn't matter that it was a self-release. It was exactly what I needed at that time in my life and career, I suppose.
for you. So, and then, so the album was finished. You told your parent, "Hey, by the way, I finished this." What do you do with the record? I mean, did you begin sending that to radio station or promoting? How? Because you did something now. How you take that into the real world, right? And how you managed to do that, and that what you did about it once you finished the first one.
That's I should also, by the way, just mention that my dad also, of course, helped me with the drums in that record. So I did eventually tell him and be like, "Hey, do you want to be a part of this?" Because I love the idea of having something that will be here forever, like beyond him, beyond me, but something like
Sure.
we did together. So, but yeah, when the record was done, basically I had no contacts in the music business really, because I've been working in the business since I was what 15, 16, because of my mom that had contacts and got me into that because I wanted to do research and figure out how does the live scene work on like a bigger level. So I started working for what is now Live Nation Norway when I was like 16, I guess, or yeah, 16 I think it was. But I didn't really have the contacts for that part, like the press, like that kind of whole, like that part of the business. So basically, what I did is it was like a long process of just trying to collect emails for different press outlets and trying to like hit especially like smaller web scenes, smaller YouTube channels, things like that, to try to get some kind of interest around the project. So I sent out like so many emails in regards to this with like with the album, with the artwork, explaining the thing and all this kind of stuff. And I did get some response back, and I got a hell of a lot of just people ignoring the emails. And same for when I started. So a bit later on, because I didn't start right away, but a bit later on when I started out trying to get live shows, it was a bit the same process of trying to convince people like, hey, like this is this project, and I just released the record some like a year ago or 2 years ago, and now we're gonna play live, and blah blah blah. So in the beginning, if you don't have the, if you don't have the contacts to begin with, basically it's just like a tedious process of sending out a whole lot of stuff. It becomes like quantity over quality almost. You just send out so many emails, and you're probably not going to get a reply to like, I don't know, 80% or maybe more of the emails. So that's what I did. I just like went to bands that I liked, looked at like, the outlets that have been covering their music, and just trying to like figure out like, from there if there was anyone that would like to cover this. And actually, I did find some press outlets that have been covering my albums ever since, which is kind of like extra special with those ones that were there like from the very beginning, and they're like, yeah, we'll give this a shot. So yeah, it's kind of a lot of work, but it was just a part of the process, and I'm kind of happy I did it because then I got a little bit of a feeling for that side of the project as well. So
Mm.
then I got the Season of Mist on board for the second record, Wistful, that came out in 2016. So it wasn't that long that I had to do the stuff on my own, which I'm very grateful for that they came in and were interested to work together. Like there were 5 labels interested at that point, but Season of Mist was the one that seemed like the best match, and I think it turned into a really really nice collaboration over the years.
Good for you. That's a very good album, by the way, as well. The second one.
Thank
I
you.
like all the stuff. I was preparing interviews for this interview. I listened to all your stuff,
Yeah.
and when I was preparing question, and believe it or not, many times I don't use the question. I memorize kind of I have like a photographic memory, and kind of I I as I'm reading you, believe it or not,
Yeah.
I ask you questions, so I don't have, although I prepare stuff, mostly I don't use it.
Yes.
I'm good at plus I'm very good at I'm easy to read people,
Yeah.
with your hands. So I noticed where people are comfortable. Should I go there or should I not go there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Should I go there? But I'm glad that you didn't give up, Kathrine. It could be very easy for you after the first record. I don't know, you mentioned 80% of the people didn't get back to you. Say, hey, no, what the heck? I don't want to do this. It's too difficult. It's too complicated. I'm doing everything on my own.
Yeah.
Uh, maybe you should get back to school and do something else for a little, and you didn't give up. So, and I'm glad that, Season Miss give you a chat, and then
Me
you
too.
were able to do it. That was the second record. And then, so the second record was out. I imagine that opened a lot of doors for you, right?
It
And,
did.
and, and at the beginning, you began reaching out to bands. Hey, I would love to, open the show for you guys because I love your music, even if you pay me whatever, $100 per gig, whatever. I want to, take my music out there into the real world, and you did that. So that's what's happened. It's, you began pinging bands and say, "Can are you open for you guys?" or stuff like that. Or,
I mean, pretty much because back then I didn't have my booking agency, so it
yeah,
took years to start working with booking agencies. And if
yeah,
I'm just very honest, the ones that I work with in the beginning, like I had a couple of different ones, and they were not good. They were not good at their job, and I made a bad call working with them. So I learned that the hard way, which means that basically Sylvaine wasn't a very active live band until after COVID. So it's only in the last few years actually that we've
yeah,
been touring around, and like really doing much, much, much more shows than we did pre-COVID. So, but from like 2016 when Wistful came out, I still was on my own, and I was still doing that part on my own. So I was trying to like reach out to festivals, reach out to like booking agencies and stuff like that to try to like you said, try to get on tours or try to get on like support slots, trying to get blah. And again, very interesting to have done that at some point in my career, because then I kind of, even if it's like a very small level, and I'm not comparing that to the work of my actual agent, Alex at Doomstar, but I know a little bit about how it feels with this back and forth with local promoters and how that works. And I will just say that it is probably my least favorite part of all the things I did, just because there was a lot of people that took advantage of the situation there too, because they knew that you're a kind of, or for now, sort of unknown band. So they have the kind of already the authority, like the authority high ground. So they're like, yeah, but I'm doing you a favor to let you play here or to do that. So which means that you end up with a lot of deals that are not that great, just because they're dealing with you directly. Like usually with a booking agent, they will come in and they will be like a bit more strict, and demand more. I've never been a person that's been very good at like promoting myself or like, demanding stuff on my behalf, because I'm also very much a person that kind of doesn't like to cause any problems and just like let's all be friends and have happy, which is like a terrible quality when you're going to do this kind of work.
yeah.
So
That's right. Yeah,
that's not the best thing at all. You have to be a bit more strict and a bit more like firm and like, like, no, this is my worth. And if you don't accept that, I'm out. I didn't do that. So that means that we didn't play that many shows to begin with anyways, because, I didn't have that many contacts. And also, again, being rather unknown, a lot of people are like, yeah, but you're not going to sell me tickets. So I don't want to put any money on you, which is understandable. I get that. At the end of the day, it's a business. So, you have to think like that. I understand. We did do, I think the first show was in 2016. So that was August 2016. So Wistful came out in, I think it was May 2016, or something like that. I believe it was May. At this point, I'm like very blessed and privileged to be able to say I can't remember all the release dates anymore because I have too many releases. And I don't even
which is
have
a good
that
thing,
many.
right?
It's a good thing. I don't even have that many, but it's enough for me to be like,
Yeah.
or maybe it just says something about how my brain is doing. I don't know, but I believe it was May 2016, and then we had our first show in 2016, also in August 2016 as a band, and that was it. Like I had that one show, and then there was like small things in 2017. We actually did like the main thing that I remember from that year. There was like, of course, some festival shows and stuff like that. We actually did a tour in Russia. That was the first and only time we're going to do that, obviously. We did a tour in Russia, and we also played Kiev in Ukraine. At that time, I'd love to go back to Ukraine at some point. But it was just like small things. There would be like, 6 shows in 1 year or something like that. Maybe not even. Like it was not that much. And that was the case like I said, up until 2021, when COVID kind of, at the end of 2021, when COVID was kind of getting a little more under control, we had our first shows back after the COVID thing at the Nation Festival in the UK in Leeds, when I was in Leeds still. And then we had a festival in Germany called Glumar. And then 2022 hit, and we were like out on the road quite a lot. Like we did 2 US tours, we did a European tour, and from there it kind of hasn't stopped. So, but in the beginning, from the 2016 era, because I did play my first shows with Sylvaine in 2014, technically, but I did like an opening for my best friend Daria. She had an exhibition here in Oslo because she's a visual artist and photographer, and I did my first show with Sylvaine for her, like opening of her exhibition, and then I went to South America for as an opening act for Alceste, the French band, which was amazing because I had never played guitar, like only once before, like at that time with my friend Daria. I never played guitar for people before. So it was kind of like a interesting beginning there. And in 2015, I don't think we played any shows. And then 2016, I actually got my live band together. That's why I keep saying we. And we played our first show. And then from there on out, I've had my live guys. And then along the way, I started working with booking agencies. And since 2021 or 2022, technically, I suppose, I started working with my current agency, Doomstar Bookings, they're just absolutely amazing. And I love them so much. I love my agent, Alex. He's fantastic and believes in my music, which is like very cool. So yeah, from the beginning, sending out emails to now having people to do that for me.
Good for you. How difficult is to make a living as a musician? How difficult it was? Because you mentioned the first 2 albums were 2014 to 2017. You were not earning any money because you were not touring, and whatever the amount they pay you was little. How you managed to pay the bills and survive and eat every day? Were you working part-time somewhere as well, or you living at home, or no?
That's the thing. That living from music has always been, like, no matter what decade we look at, has always been a complicated thing. I
Yeah.
think now with the modern uh, way of the business, like, with the streaming and kind of physical product not being as interesting anymore, like, buying CDs and LPs. Luckily, the metal scene is very good at this. They still buy merchandise, which is fantastic. And that's, again, one of the great things about being connected to this scene. The audience is so warm and so like supportive of you. So I love having the connection to the scene. Um, but it's extremely difficult to survive as a musician. Touring is probably not going to be a thing in the next, I don't know, within the next decade. You will see touring only become something for bigger bands because the cost of touring now is ridiculous. Even bigger acts that are playing good sized rooms, selling out rooms, will pay to play to go on tour because of because the way that the world works and everything the costs have gone up post COVID. A lot of people also don't want to take as much risks post COVID, which is completely understandable. But it makes it extremely difficult to survive in a creative field in general. It's just not in music. It's also like in visual arts, as a graphic designer, all this kind of stuff. It's very, very complicated. So what I did is I actually started saving a savings account from when I was a teenager, knowing that at some point I wanted to really like take a chance on this as my main job because there was nothing else that I really wanted to do in my life. I had other interests, but I just like knew that this one was the one that this is my path. I really want to and need to try to walk this. So how can I do that? So I started saving up as a teenager. So I had an account where basically it would be like a buffer for when times were tough. I also sacrificed my independence. I lived at home until I was rather old, actually, compared to all of my friends. Because my parents, being the wonderful, beautiful people they are, they supported me and they're like, yeah, you can live here. Like, if this can help you, like, towards your dreams, then let's do that. So I just, of course, I've always been helping out and stuff because both my parents are a bit older. They waited a bit to get me. So my mom has never really, she has had a lot of health issues over the last few decades. So it was also nice to just be at home just for that, but then it also allowed me to save the money on rent and everything. And of course, throughout the years, depending on which period you're talking about, I've also had like side things. Like I said, I worked for Live Nation Norway. where I've done all kinds of stuff. To wardrobe assistant, I do catering assistant. I've been like dressing room coordinator. I've been merchandiser. I've been doing all kinds of different things, and I actually really like it because it still allows me to work in music. It allows me to see a lot of shows, to actually get some contacts in the bigger leagues, and it has taught me a lot. And I really like working under pressure. So that has been really cool because I can kind of just come and go as I need. Like when I'm home, I can say I'm home, give me work, and when I'm gone, and that's it. So it's been very flexible, and I started doing that actually already when I was at, like I said, my 16, around 16, when I was in high school. So that's been a really good thing. And in addition, I've also been teaching singing on the side because that's something I really love, vocals. And during the whole COVID pandemic years, a lot of people were stuck at home, and a lot of people were trying things that they didn't have time to do in their regular life because they were forced to be like, stuck basically. So I had a lot of students at that time, and a lot of people. It was like such a nice thing. Like it was such a light point in my life, and hopefully in their life too. And I also have been teaching and still teach yoga on the side because this is a practice that I really love for my body and my mind. Something I got into because I was looking for something to do on tour that would like keep my body like in a good state to be able to perform, relax, like limber, and also have like a mental health benefit. So yeah, of course, like I think a lot of people when you talk to them in creative domains, they will have done other things on the side or do other things on the side so they can continue to do this main thing. For me, it's always been about finding other things I can do when I need to have like incomes from other places that will still allow me to keep Sylvain as my main job because that's what I want to do. And of course, at some point, if it's, I don't want to be a financial burden to anyone. So, I mean, if at some point I see that this doesn't work anymore, of course, I will just, put on my big girl pants and go somewhere else and do something else. But for now, the last decade has been about doing everything to try to keep this as my main focus. And like I said, saving up when I was a teenager and then like taking on small odd jobs here and there. And then, of course, as the band grows, so does the income. So,
Sure.
yeah, it's really hard, very hard, and you're not going to live a luxury life unless you become like something massive like I don't know, Ghost, or if you get like into the big leagues and you're like Billie Eilish or whatever. You're not going to become rich, of course, but I seriously doubt that anyone that gets into this kind of field does it for that reason. Like that never even crossed my mind. I was just like, if I can live humbly and do this for the rest of my life, I'll be happy. Like because at least my soul is fulfilled, which is the most important.
You're a very strong woman, and you have a strong will.
I
Although
suppose.
you say you're shy, no, well, everybody's shy, but you know what you're doing, and you have a good, strong personality, So
I suppose so. Yeah, you're probably right. Like,
no, you do. I'm serious. You
yeah,
do.
yeah,
Uh, the third album, 2018, was 6 years ago. Atoms Alive and Coming Undone.
yes,
Coming Undone. Then again, the same question. How difficult was to put it together? After three albums, I'm quite sure now we are talking before the pandemic. It opened more doors for you. I mean, you were,
yes,
nobody, if you're no good at all, you couldn't be doing three records. So although you think you were an unknown and humble and quiet and introvert lady, your third record was out there and you were opening doors for yourself or somebody helping you with a booking agent or a manager or whatever. But it still is very, very hard. I like I told you before, right? Music is important part of my life.
yeah,
And little by little, when I opened the YouTube channel and the radios, I began understanding how difficult it is.
yeah,
I mean, before right, I was going to a concert, I pay $100, I drink a couple of beers and go to work. I don't know, it was never thought about maybe the bus that they were traveling or the folks that they were working with, they were complicated, or
yeah,
maybe Kathrine didn't get a good night's sleep and she
yeah,
still needed to go on a stage at 8 o'clock and talk to people and perform, for an hour and a half. Whether you have a lot of problem the hour before or the day before or whatever. I was buying money. I was $100 or whatever, hypothetically the number, but I didn't understand why. I didn't understand your life. So I wouldn't know why people wouldn't perform that great, or I didn't care if you were tired, or the bass have a breakdown, or you didn't have enough money to get a good night meal, or I don't know, whatever. So it's a very difficult way to make a living, because now I am, after opening the channel, I began understanding the complexity of the stuff. So
That is
uh,
that's I think that's why I say that like I think that people that get into this for the right reasons are basically the only ones you see around, because this life is way too hard to stay there if it's something that you don't really like passionately love.
yeah,
Because like it's and I understand people don't see, like they only see like the tip of the iceberg. They don't see any of the stuff that happens behind the scenes,
mm,
or what goes into making that show, or what goes into releasing that record. So as an artist, sometimes you get really frustrated when people would be, like you said, they will like criticize you for not putting on a good show. Or for example, like it's a classic one that used to annoy me a lot, like people will complain about like the shipping cost to buy your record and stuff, and you're like, I spent 4 years of my life and all my savings putting this together, so maybe you can like fork out those $20, even if I get that that's a lot. So I do understand that it's not something that everyone thinks about, because I mean the way that the music business has worked also, like for very very many decades, has been rather secretive. It hasn't been a super open, like, come in and we'll show you how all of these things work. I mean, nor maybe have people been interested in knowing how things work. But nowadays, with social media and everything, it's becoming really much more open about what is actually happening on the times that we're not releasing that record, and we're not doing this performance, or we're not doing something that's like in the public eye. And there's more and more bands also speaking about the difficulties of touring. You see more and more cancellation that's happening because of health, mental health or physical health. You see people talking about how like I'm selling out like 500 capacity rooms and doing this tour all around Europe, and at the end of the day, I still am like minus 40,000 euros at the end of the tour. So I mean, it's an immensely difficult business. It's an immensely unhealthy business to be in. Touring is not good. It's not good for your mind. It's not good for your body. It's good for your soul. Those moments you are on stage, those moments you get to talk to people afterwards, those moments that people come up to you and tell you, like, that your song meant something to them. That feeds your soul, and that's what keeps you alive. But to be very honest, it's not a situation that is healthy. Like otherwise, I'm not even like on tour. I'm not a big party person. Like I've never been in my regular life either. I don't get like drunk and like fucked up every night, or like take drugs, stuff like that. Not that I judge people that do, because I understand why they do actually.
yeah,
Um, but still, I can tell you that like sitting still, or like being confined into like a very small space, or like all this kind of stuff that's just like not good on your body. Like sitting in a van for 8 hours per day. Nobody's gonna tell me that this is good for my physical or my mental health.
yeah, yeah,
That love for those moments you're on stage, it just makes up for everything else and just blurs everything else. And I like to talk to other people that are touring, and we like joke about it being some sort of Stockholm syndrome, because actually there's so many things that are difficult, and there's so many things that kind of work against us, and that kind of tells us that this is not a good life choice. But in the end, the love for this and the need to do it trumps everything else. So
yeah,
yeah, I really do appreciate when people actually take a moment to think about, if just a little bit. It doesn't have to be like a full understanding, but just a little thought to what actually goes into making a show happen, or what goes into making a record and releasing it out to the world, or even a song. It doesn't have to be a record, video, whatever, that kind of thing, some kind of project. Because in the end, like, I think a lot of artists, at least, sacrifice like so much in their life to be able to do that, and to try to make, of course there's an ego thing in it too, like you feel good about it yourself, but in the end it's also about that, like sharing with other people and trying to make other people like feel something, or feel happy, or something. So
yeah.
yeah.
No wonder that you practice yoga, and then to relax, because otherwise you get stressed out, and in my case, I will cry.
Yeah.
Because it's no glamorous, right? So you
No.
do a show 8 to 10, then you need to take everything on stage. You go into a bus, right? You have to leave at 12. You arrive in another city, I don't know, 4 o'clock in the morning, and
Yeah.
then in some places you if you play a couple nights back to back, you don't stay in a hotel, right? And then you need to take a shower or something else and put back makeup. At 4 o'clock, you need to do sound check, and then you're tired, try to get, email or call your mom or whatever, and then 8 o'clock to 10, the same thing, and you do it again and again. So it over a week, right? You're doing, I don't know, 5 weeks, 5 shows in a week, whatever that is. One, you're not making any money, you're not sleeping well, you're on the bus, you cannot take a shower sometime every day, and you need to put makeup, brush your teeth, and then perform for a couple hours as if, you know,
and then
it's
usually
everything
also,
glamour.
the fun part is that usually everyone gets sick on tour as well. Like that's just a classic thing. Like one person gets a cold and then everyone goes down because you're always so
Yeah,
close to everyone. Or just
of
because
course.
like when you, even if it's lovely to see people every night, like when you see like, tens of hundreds of people every night, you're always at risk to pick up all kinds of stuff. Like I got all kinds
Yeah.
of weird things on tour. Like I got even chicken pox as an adult person from being like
Yeah.
doing a meet and greet, and then a few days later I have chicken pox as a 30-year-old woman. So
Yeah.
it's just it really is an intense thing, and I think now that people are speaking more about it, because also
Mm.
sometimes if you speak about this with people that are outside of the music business, they're like, "Oh, but you chose this yourself. Why are you complaining?" And it's like it's not about complaining; it's about talking about the realities of this is how this work life looks like, and it is very unconventional, and it is also quite challenging because I mean, in one way, it's okay. Yeah, you have like a routine, as you said. You have these like checkpoints every day where you do stuff, but there's always things happening on tour where things don't go according to plan, and then you have to be able to react to that in a way that is good and that still kind of keeps everyone happy. You also have to like the human side of touring, which is everyone is basically lacking personal space. Everyone is going through stuff. Everyone is like feeling different from day to day, which also is very difficult to navigate. Sometimes you have people that just don't go together, but you have to live together for 5 weeks. You
That's
have
right. Yeah.
all these little things that makes touring a very specific and what can I say, acquired tastes kind of work because it is fucking hard. There's no other way to put it. It is really hard. I love it personally, but I also like now because obviously I'm not 17 anymore, so I'm not the kind of person that's like, yeah, let's sleep on the floor of the van for 5 weeks. Like I'm not going to do that because I know I won't be able to perform well for my audience, which is
Sure.
all they deserve basically.
Mm.
So I know kind of like what I need to be able to function, and sometimes I can get that, sometimes I can't. Um, but like on this last tour that I did with Ivan, for example, I started the tour with the flu, so I felt like absolute death. Like I actually ended up like not being able to play the first show because I had to postpone my flight because I felt so bad that I'm like I can't sit on a plane for like 10 hours and be okay with that. Um, so I had to postpone my flight, and I ended up in Vancouver 30 minutes after I was supposed to play, which was very frustrating, but that's how it is. But like I still had the flu, and I still like put on the shows, in the next following days, and just you
Mm.
have to work around it. Like you have to find ways to make it work. And yeah, sometimes it's nice to have the just a tiny bit of understanding for the fact that we're just human. We're trying. Everyone wants the same thing. We all want to put on a good show so we can like make people happy. But in the end, it's a lot of things working against us to make that happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. The album for 2022, Nova, is also a very good one.
Thank you so
Uh,
much.
yeah, and
Very
you
proud.
just, no, of course, you're doing very well. I saw you, of course, at the beginning of the conversation, I was telling you that I saw you performing with Ivor, which is another idol of mine.
Yeah,
Uh, and that she's a very nice person. Without mentioning name, I have interviewed a lot of people that are very good musicians, very good artists, but they are arrogant, complicated,
yeah,
and other people like you and Ivor and her sister. Um,
yeah.
Also, that they're nice people. They're great in what they do, and at the same time, they're great. And well, at least they are nice to me. I don't know. It's what's the point of being good in what you do, whether you're a soccer player or a writer, and you're a terrible human being inside, and you're arrogant, and I don't know what people are like that. I don't understand. So
I also don't understand. I always say that there's never an excuse, no matter who you are, no matter what kind
yeah,
of skills you have, to be a bad, to be an asshole, to be a person that's
yeah,
just arrogant and just
yeah,
doesn't care.
Mm.
there's never a reason to show lack of empathy. I don't
Yeah,
understand. I have never understood that, why people become like, the so-called divas or whatever. I just don't get that. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Good for you. Good for you. We have good news. You're going to be touring very soon.
Yes.
Actually, it's going to be your first headline solo tour. You go in, okay, so you go in Copenhagen, then you go to Netherlands, then Germany, France,
Yeah.
UK, and so on. So good for you. Are you excited? Are you looking forward? Are you nervous?
I'm so excited. Like, I just like, a few years ago kind of really, I mean, it's been a long time actually, not just a few years ago, but a few years ago, I started to believe that I could actually do these solo performances. And I talked to my booking agent, Alex, and I was like, hey,
Yeah.
I told you from the beginning that Sylvain could be like two different formats. It could be like the full band with my
Yeah.
live musician I hire, and I can do stuff on my own, or like, even with my guitar player, like a duo, whatever, but like a stripped down version. And I think in the beginning, he was like, yeah, that's nice, but I don't really see how that's going to work. But then a few years ago, I was like, no, listen, we really have to like develop this side of it too, because I really feel a need to do this more intimate thing and more cathartic thing, because I feel it like when I do the solo shows, that kind of difference between on stage and off stage becomes so much less. Like it's much more intimate, it's much more direct connection, and more cathartic, I guess, in a way, more scary, of course, too. So I was just like, I'm sure I can do this, and I really would like to explore that in addition to the band shows, because I love my live guys; they're amazing, and we have such a good time together on stage. But I'm sure that this is something that I need to explore. So a few years ago, I started getting like some. I think the first ones I did was in 2019. I was asked to do like a special show in a church in Belgium by a very dear friend of mine called Philip, and he was like, I think you can do like a stripped down set. So I did that. But like, this was the first time I did this kind of stripped down but still electric thing. Because when I back in 2014 played for my friend Dara, that was a fully acoustic show. Same in South America, it was an acoustic show with an acoustic guitar. So this was a different thing. So I started using samples and like things to try to make the universe still very Sylvain, but like in a very intimate way. So, but it wasn't before like I want to say 2023, where I actually got like a couple of more like opportunities to do this. And again, being kind of a novelty in this metal scene, regardless if you call Sylvain a metal band or not, I am able to do stuff like, if they ask me, hey, do you want to come to this exhibition and play like a solo set and still have metal elements? I can do that. Whereas a lot of metal bands maybe can't because of the way that their music works. So I was like, hey, I have this. It can be like, an advantage. I'm going to use it. So it wasn't before last year though that I actually did my first like full tours in solo format, and did my first headlining show. I did it in Athens last year in April to see, is this something that can work like in a like a full concert, because I would understand if people get bored because it's just me, like it's not necessarily something you want to watch for like an hour and a half. Um, but at the same time, I was like, I'm confident I can take them on a journey, even if it's just me on my own, and a very dynamic journey and like everything. And it went so well. The audience was so nice. It was such a lovely evening that after that I was just like, right, okay, we have to do this more. I went to Italy. I did a solo tour there. That was 3 dates. That was lovely. And then I got, of course, this opportunity to play with Ivar in Europe and to open for her. And I was like, oh my goodness. It was so funny because she was on my list of like bands I wished to play with one day, like, because I really I love her to death. She's like become such an important person in my life actually in the last half year. All of them actually in her crew and everything. I love them to bits. But I really liked her music before getting to know her as a person, and I liked the way that she portrayed herself on social media. I'm like, she seems like a very nice person, as you said. Indeed, she very much is a very nice person. And when I got this opportunity, I was just like, oh my goodness. Said yes, of course. And then I realized that, oh my goodness, this is going to be like big stages, a lot of people, and I'm just going to be there all my own, and people are not necessarily know what I'm doing. So it was kind of like the test to see how does it work to tour this setup. I'm also going out completely alone. I don't know anyone. It's just me. I don't have any like people in my team like I usually do with my band and my sound engineer. Uh, but it was just such an amazing experience, and that's because they are all fantastic human beings that I again love to bits. But that also made me realize that I can do tours like this and I can do more. And my agent Alex was a bit like, oof, we should really like do something with this. So that's when this tour came about. Like, we're talking about doing this headlining tour around Europe, and I was so excited to see it finalized, like at the end of, was it the end of last year, beginning of this year, and actually being able to go out now and do this and promote the EP and just like promote this more intimate setup of my live shows. And I am so excited to go out. Like, it's always a bit like of a mixture. You should be a bit anxious, you should be a bit nervous, because it means the world to me. So I feel like if I wasn't a bit nervous about it, it would be weird. So I'm really excited, I'm nervous, and I'm anxious to get started like in a few months. And it's just so cool to be able to go, like, you know, from Scandinavia down into mainland Europe over to the UK. It's like, I think it's a nice mixture of around Europe. And yeah, I'm just really excited to see how it develops, and excited to kind of like, you know, go with the flow. That's something I've been doing more these last years too, like changing the set list or changing things on the fly just because today I feel like playing this. Or sometimes I'll even say to the audience, what do you want to hear? You want to hear like one of my older songs? You want to hear a cover? I'll let them choose, and they always get very like, oh my god, we don't know, like it's your show. But so I'm kind of excited to see how this develops and how it goes. And just like, again, really grateful that I get the opportunity to do this, and to see that people are excited to come out, and to have amazing bands with me as well. Like, I have Grift with me, which is a Swedish solo project by Erik. He's like a lovely human being that I had the honor of playing with last year as well here in Oslo. And then I have Ozzy and the Jupiter, which is a really, really nice trio from the States, actually coming all the way over for this tour, playing like this very beautiful folk music. So I just have a feeling it's going to be a very special tour, like with very like, I would say like really heartfelt, meaningful evenings for each show. And yeah, just bottom line, very excited to get started.
Good, good, good for you. Feel free to mention where listener of this podcast can buy your music, your website, and I will put the link there as well. So feel free to mention the name where people can help you. Are you part of, you have associated with any Patreon that people can donate money or a crowdfund for? You
So I'm
should.
not that. I know. So many people have told me I should have a Patreon. The thing with the Patreon thing, which I think is a really cool concept, but even when like some of my label mates became quite famous for getting like into that and be some of the first bands to do that and like succeed with it. Basically, I always had a little bit of a problem with it, because I'm feeling like, of course, the audience are happy to help. I know that I've had so many people
Yeah,
tell me that you should get a Patreon. I would love to pay for something per month to, you know,
yeah,
support you
yeah.
and whatnot. But I always felt a bit like, first and foremost, it's not really their responsibility. If they show up at shows, they buy merchandise, they listen to your music, they spread your music to your friends and whatever, that's pretty much all you can ask for, and that's like the best thing ever. But then
Yeah.
with the Patreon, I always felt a bit like, yeah, I don't know. I still, even now, you can see it when I'm talking about it. I'm a bit
Sure,
like
sure.
conflicted. I'm like a crowdfunding thing. Like, we did that last year because my guitar player and I were robbed in Italy last year at the end of our first tour of the year back in January 2024. It was very lucky, it was at the end of the tour. So we were actually on our way to the airport, and we stopped for a coffee, and we left our van for like not very long at all. It was 15, 20 minutes in a very like nice open space where there was other people parked, and it didn't look sketchy at all, in Milan. And our van was broken into, and they stole everything. So we lost all of our gear, and we also lost all of our personal equipment and everything. And because I'm the only financial entity connected to Sylvaine, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get all of this back. I had my insurance, of course, that covered some of my gear and stuff like that. But for Florian, my guitar player, he had nothing. So I was like, how can we do this? And we decided to open a crowdfunding, because
Yeah.
we're like, maybe people will want to help. And the response was so overwhelming. People were so nice, and they were so willing to help us, and like spreading the word and donating, and like it was insane. So we were, both of us, like, this is a terrible situation that we wish wouldn't have happened, but at the same time, now we see like how many people actually care, which is really beautiful. So we have
Absolutely. Yeah.
crowdfunding for like specific things. Like that one time we did that, but the Patreon is like, I don't know. It's I don't know. I still have conflicted feelings about that. And also having this project that revolves around like spirituality, and about this thing about like human society being problematic, and like, the problematic sides of the way the society works and the way that we work when we're here as humans. I always felt a bit like, can I do that? I'm not even sure it like feels right, like in alignment with the spirit of my project. So therefore I haven't opened a Patreon, because I was just like, if I'm in doubt, I probably shouldn't do it. Like, I should follow my gut, and hopefully people will buy merchandise from my website. You can go to my official website, sylvainmusic.com, where you can find my link tree, which is linktree/sylvainmusic. Sylvain Music.
Yep.
You can find it on Bandcamp, just searching for Sylvain. You can find it through Season of Mist in North America and Europe. There's many ways to get merchandise at shows, of course. I'll gladly sign it for you at shows.
All right, that's great.
To shows, But yeah, Patreon, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe one day, but right now I'm still like,
You need to be helpful. It was very nice talking to you, Kathrine. You're a wonderful lady and very talented musician. But most importantly, whether you're a painter, a musician, or soccer, you're a great human being. You're a very decent person, a good person. So it was very nice talking to you. And for my end, keep me posted if I can help you out with any promotion or promoting your tour or upcoming record or coming, EP, whatever. I'm here to help. As I mentioned before, I do this because I have no choice. Like you didn't have any choice. Music is an important part of my life, and I'm very shy as well, like you. I say, well, look at the mirror, right? When you want to do it, you don't want to do it. There's nothing in between. So I decided to do it, and I want to help as many musicians as I can with the donation that I do from the YouTube channel. And I don't. My ego is very low. I want to create a musical archive for future generation. That's all. That's all it is. No, I don't. I don't give an explanation to anybody, or it's not an ego thing. Just music is an important part of my life. That's what it is. So I grew up in a family where music was important. I'm very grateful to my dad. Right? So
that's so cool. I know the feeling. Like, we're both doing it because we must, and
that's
because we
right.
want to
Yeah.
help others. We want to make other people, happy, I guess, essentially. So that's so
Absolutely.
cool. Thank you so much for having me, Claudia. It was
No, no
awesome.
problem.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take it easy. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.